Good evening, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to speak with a super posh accent. First of all, a disclaimer. I make no pretense to be upper class. I'm as common as muck. I'm from working class origins, but as it so happens I speak in received pronunciation. So some people regard my accent as posh. I've been told that from places such as Manchester. But here we go. So I can tone up, or I can plumb up, I suppose, from my RP accent to a ridiculously posh one, which will be a bit out of date. And posh people tend to speak very precisely, and I suppose when they slur their sounds, again, that's deliberate too. One of the things is hitting the letter T as though it's a hammer on an anvil, the long vowels. Take Austria. I pronounce it fairly long, but it can be like Austria. Again, that's a bit out of date, but if you really want to be exceedingly posh, that's the way to do it. That and Australia, saying ja, like in German. So the slang word for yes is big like ja, but they're really string out ja. Okay, ja, things like that. Certain markers, very upper class people have particular slang. For instance, paka. It's a loan word from Hindi, borrowed in the 19th century, to mean excellent, just right. And these paka people would say words like that. Things would be super for them. What else? Always say dinner jacket. Never say tuxedo, saying, oh, only working class people say that, or Americans say that. Not that it's bad to be either of those, but if you want to be very upper crust and British, one would not use that word. Even saying one to mean people generally. And indeed it does have a purpose. For instance, a teacher years ago at my school, who was new in the school, saying, you don't have to take exercise then, so you could be really lazy. And he corrected himself, one could be really lazy, to make it crystal clear that he wasn't accusing me in particular being lazy, but a person could be lackadaisical. Remember to say pudding, never say dessert, or even worse is sweet. This is because all these have got overt prestige. I know people who want to indicate they belong to different socioeconomic groups might go for things of covert prestige, which are not seen as so high status, but indicate their belonging to that social set. You may be aware of the Mitford sisters, and one of them had her list of you or non-you words. That's Nancy Mitford, I think. But that's old hat, and she said you mustn't say you mustn't say teacher, that's middle class, you must say schoolmaster. But again, that's outdated. When hunting, always talk about hounds, never dogs. In other contexts, it's quite acceptable to say dogs. Calling people by their surname, even if you know them well. You notice in a master-servant relationship, the master often called the servant by his surname, known him for years. And upper-class people might tend to have certain Christian names. And say Christian name, don't say first name. And these would often be from classical literature of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, or some of the names out of the Bible, or else very standard Anglophone names. Okay, well, George is one of them, but that's a saint, or John, but that's out of the Bible. Landy for Land Rover, I haven't heard that for a while. If you want to pick up this accent, if you're in London, go to a nightclub called Mahiki. I've only been there once. It's on Dover Street in Piccadilly. Their Royal Highnesses, Prince William and Prince Harry, used to go there a lot about 2006. Fall in with the Sloane Rangers, so named for the people who used to hang around Sloane Square. Princess Diana was, I suppose, the queen of the Sloane Rangers, though she was a bit too timid to really be part of them before she got engaged in 1980. But they were her sort of crew. Watch The Crown, that series. I mean, it started in the 40s, and the Queen's accent back then seems risible today. So if you start sounding like her, even amongst extraordinarily pucker people, they might think it's ludicrous. So I'll go through some anachronistic pronunciations. I'm going to read a text in my ordinary accent, and then you'll get the difference. How is law made? There are a number of different ways to make law. One of these is by statute. Parliament debates issues facing the country. A proposal for law is presented to Parliament. Right, so I'm going to read it again. I don't have to think about the words, therefore I can concentrate on the accent. How is law made? There are a number of different ways to make law. One of these is by statute. Parliament debates issues facing the country. A proposal for a law is presented to Parliament. This is called a bill. The bill is then debated. The bill has 3 readings in the House of Commons and 3 in the House of Lords. If the bill is passed, it becomes an act. The Queen signs it into law. So it's upgrading my current public school accent. Really work on the vowels. They're very rich. I like the people who speak like that. I'm trying to think anything else very obvious about it. Obviously, the R is usually skipped. Obviously, not if it's word initial. Unless it's immediately followed by a vowel. I'm trying to think of an example right now. There's maybe studied this accent. Perhaps you're doing it just for theatrical purposes, or indeed you want to pass yourself off as stratospherically posh. Nothing wrong with faking it. And I take my hat off people who acknowledge their frauds. Like that Colin Firth, he said, he would have a mild West Country accent, but he decided to give himself a public school accent. Well, that's all from how to speak with a super posh accent, a cut glass accent it was sometimes called. More things will come to me. Post comments below.